Welcome to A Magical Life, Health, Wealth and Weight Loss. I'm your host, Magic Barclay, lead practitioner at Holistic Natural Health Australia and #1 best-selling author. In this podcast, I aim to give you practical tips on how to accelerate and sustain your health, increase your financial, spiritual and emotional wealth, and to look at something that haunts many of us needlessly, weight loss. In some episodes, I'll have guests available to give you even more tips, but in others, the floor is yours. Drop us a line at A Magical Life Podcast on Facebook and let me know what you would like to know more about. Now, sit back and enjoy, because it is time for you to create and truly discover a magical life. Welcome to A Magical Life, episode 37. Today I'm talking to you about environmental connection. I'm your host, Magic Barclay. Again, welcome, and let's start creating your magical life. What is environmental connection? Many of us think as people that we are isolated, that we are solitary beings, and that everything revolves around our existence. And we're very, very wrong. What we are as humans is we are one species of primate, one species of thousands of species of primates, not to mention all the other species and different families of animals that are out there. All too often we think about ourselves, again, as I said, as solitary beings. But what we actually are is a collection of cells, a collection of microorganisms, a collection of microbiomes. So I'm going to break down what is a human. A human is a primate. Primates are mammals, as we know, basic science lesson. But what makes us inside is multiple microbiomes. Now, we've heard of biomes in general. We've heard of organisms, but what we are is a collection of those. So we have our gut microbiome, we have our brain microbiome, each of our teeth has its own microbiome, we have our thyroid microbiome. Every part of our body is a separate microbiome and they all work in with each other. So our heart can't pump without pumping blood. It also does not work without oxygen because we need our blood oxygenated. Our liver cannot process without us eating, drinking, breathing, thinking, feeling, touching, smelling, because all of the chemical processes the liver does require input. So we are complex beings. What gives us the right as humans to think that the world revolves around us and us alone? Nothing. We see ourselves as the advanced primate species, the one that can think, the one with opposable thumbs, the one that can build and create and invent. But are we really all that advanced? Because we are the ones that get sick. We are the ones that have weight problems. We are the ones that get depressed and we require that social input, and yet we isolate ourselves purposefully from it. Now, I'm not saying any of this to get any of you upset. I value all of my listeners here. But what I would like you to consider is environmental connection. There's an old saying, a man is not an island. And that is so true, because we need the things around us. We need the bees in the garden because we need them to pollinate our fruit and our veggies. We even need them to pollinate grass. And if you eat meat, the animals that you're eating are eating grass. Grass has seeds. It needs to germinate and pollinate, and different grasses have different flowers. And we don't exist without bees, for example. And yet, as humans, we see a bee swarm in our home, we go, danger, need to have that relocated, need to get pest exterminators out here. Why? Yes, get them relocated to someone who cares for the bees. someone who can give them a safe place to do what they do. We look at other animals, for example, bats. Now, I'm a wildlife rescuer. I've spoken to you on this podcast a little about that in the past, and in a future episode we will have an amazing rescuer from the Wildlife Rescuers talking to us about that. But let's talk about bats for now. We see bats as scary. In the movies, we see bats as vampires or disease carriers. That has come from someone's imagination. What bats actually are fascinating mammals. Yes, they're mammals just like us. They have families just like us. They raise their babies just like us. And yet we're scared of them. There are two main types of bats. Microbats, tiny, tiny little cute bats that eat bugs. Don't want those mozzies and flies eating you while you're having a barbecue? You want some bats around, some microbats. Then there's macrobats, like the fruit bats, for example. They're not going to bite you unless you're a piece of watermelon or a banana or an apple or an apricot. And yet we see them as a problem. They build their colonies on the fringes of our towns. They look for rivers where they can dip and have their water and have safe creche trees for their babies. And I could go on forever about bats. But why do we see them as a problem? Because we have an unfounded fear of them. We've disconnected ourselves from the macrobats, the fruit bats. What a fruit bat will do is pollinate and disperse seeds. We need them to create our rainforest, to create our bush growth. We need them to be able to have healthy gardens. We need them to be able to create robust food sources for ourselves. And yet we villainize them, we misunderstand them, we disconnect ourselves from them, and we elevate ourselves as humans as someone more important. That our fruit trees in our backyard are more important than the bats' lives. So what do? We try and protect our fruit trees by putting fruit netting on them. Because we're selfish as human beings. And we think that tree is just there just for us. We are so environmentally disconnected. Now, fruit netting can be one of the most dangerous things for wildlife. Why? Because they get caught in it. A bat, for example, will try and bite its way out of the fruit net, causing horrific injuries that can cause death. Why do we do that? Do we eat every single piece of fruit from that fruit tree, from that apricot tree in the backyard? No. As a rescuer, I attend net incidents to get bats and possums and birds out of the netting. And 99% of the time, the ground under the fruit tree is covered with rotting, fallen fruit. Why net the tree if you're not going to eat every single piece of fruit on it? Why not just put little safe, wildlife-friendly net bags around one cluster of fruit and allow the wildlife to take the rest? This is what I mean about environmental connection. We need to be connected to the fact that we are not the only species roaming this earth and that we actually need every other species. Another factor of environmental connection is our connection to the earth. We as humans, particularly here in Australia, we seem to have a fascination with lawn. I'm not too sure why. What does it do? Does it sustain life? Well, it does sustain life for other organisms, but not for us. Does it look nice? Yes, if it's perfectly manicured and mowed, but the extent that we have to put in our own effort and our own work for lawn that does not feed us, that does not feed many organisms, we're so environmentally disconnected from our yards. We should be planting fruits and vegetables. We should be planting native flowering trees. We should be planting trees in general to create cleaner air. We know that trees take in carbon dioxide and waste from the air, and they exude oxygen, which we need to breathe. And yet we're so focused on having these lawn and concrete gardens that do not sustain our lives. So what is environmental connection? Environmental connection is understanding your surroundings, understanding and appreciating that we are not the only species that matters, understanding and appreciating that life comes from many sources. It comes from the sun. So we should get some sun because that creates chemical processes in our bodies. It activates vitamin D. It does so many things for us. The plants understand that. We seem to have forgotten that. We need to be connected to our water sources. We need to stop polluting our water sources, stop polluting our streets. Everything that we put in the streets goes down the stormwater and into the ocean. We need to do our recycling, yes, but how many of us snip those little plastic rings on the bottles in our recycling? How many of us make sure that our recycling is broken up so it can be recycled properly? We need to be aware of our food. Where does our food come from? Is it conventional fruit and veg? Which means that once it's grown, glyphosate is thrown over the field or the paddock, everything's burnt down to the ground, and then something else is planted there. Or do we farm or source our food organically, where it's grown in enriched, nutrient-filled soils, where crop rotation is a thing because different veggies and fruits will put different minerals and compounds back into the ground. Environmental connection is our connection to our community. We talk about community here a lot on this podcast. Do you know your neighbours? Do you have a safe community around you where you can get your social needs built, where you can help other people, where you can exchange ideas, have robust discussions, share food, grow your own tomatoes, your next door neighbour's growing parsley, and you swap them? Do we have that environmental connection to our social surroundings? A man is not an island. I'll come back to that again. An island is a landform pushed up from the seabed with water around it. It is a microbiome in itself. Everything that lives and interacts on that island is meant to be there. And anything that is not is kept out by the raging ocean, by the ebb and flow of the tides. We are not an island. We are complex individuals that have so many things that affect and influence our daily lives. And yet, we see ourselves as oh so important, oh so complex, but we can't do it without being environmentally connected. There's another saying, what you put out, you get back. So as humans, what are we putting out? Are we putting out pollution? Are we putting out negative thoughts, fear, scaremongering? Are we putting out hatred? Or are we putting out understanding and acceptance and critical thinking and questioning and reasoning? What are we putting out in order to get back? Now, back in Epicurean times, Epicurus was a philosopher. He had the Epicurean Academy. Now, we've hijacked the word Epicurean, but what it actually means is in his academy, it was an open amphitheatre. You could eat and share food with your community in the amphitheatre, in the academy, under very strict conditions. You had to have an open discussion while you were sharing food. You had to be joyous. You either had to sing or dance or rhyme or laugh. You could not talk issues of the day, which we now call politics and media. You could not talk about problems. You could not discuss wars or responses to it. You could not talk about fears or stresses. Epicurus would only allow you into the academy to live a truly Epicurean lifestyle if you brought joy. Because what he said was, when we take in nutrients to our body, we need to take it in with a positive charge, not a negative charge. He didn't use the word charge, but that's basically what we would phrase it as today. So it was a place where you could not hold on to anger. If you had been at war with your neighbour, you could not go to the academy to break bread with your fellow man. If you had a positive way to express yourself or wanted to discuss philosophy of the day, you could come to the Epicurean Academy. Why don't we live like that now? How many of us sit down to dinner with our families every night, discuss our days, exchange ideas, exchange thoughts, exchange gratitudes? This is part of our environmental connection. We are so disconnected from family. We're eating in front of the TV. We're eating in a rush. We're eating at staggered meal times because everyone's working or studying or something's going on. We've got a sport activity to run off to, or I don't know, something's going on. Why don't we share that time and get environmentally connected to our family? Do you know the slightest thing that the 3-year-old in a family saw today? It may not seem important to you. It might be a ladybug flew onto their hand, but do you know that? Have you given them time to tell you over dinner, over a meal, about this amazing creature that was red and black and landed on the hand and it tickled and it had pretty little dots and it reminded me of whatever? Do we go into any of that now as a family? Do you know your neighbours? Do you take a cup of coffee over to your neighbour and just shoot the breeze? Have a chat. Not about politics, not about how stressed you are, but about how great it is that the flowers in the garden are blooming. Or isn't it beautiful, the birds that are singing? Do we take a moment to get ourselves connected to these small but oh so important little factors? Now back to environmental connection. We do need to appreciate the environment. We do need to live sustainably and ethically. We do need to understand that we are not in this alone. We need to look at ourselves as one part that cannot exist independently of the whole. That is what environmental connection is. The sum of all things is greater than each of the parts. Why? Because we are not the only creature that lives here. We are not going to have endless food and water available to us if we do not appreciate the birds, the bees, the bats, the other animals that share our existence. We can't appreciate them if we're going to trash their homes all the time. I'm sounding like I'm on my soapbox here, and I don't mean to, but you would not invite a stranger into your home and say, can you throw disgusting, filthy rubbish all over my home because that would make me so happy. If you said that, someone would think you were crazy. So why do we do it in nature? Why do we drop our cigarette butts? Why do we drop our plastic bottles? Why do we leave rubbish behind? We pick up our doggy poo in a little plastic bag and then we leave that sitting on the ground. Why do we do that? And why do we seem to go out of our way to disconnect ourselves from our environment? Why do we kill bugs and bees? Why do we disperse bat colonies? Why do we kill our native animals? No matter what country you're living in, there's culling and killing going on all the time. Why? We need them. If humans were erased from the planet, everything else would coexist so happily. Nature would fight back. The land would become abundant once again, because no other species is so disconnected from environment as humans. So how does this relate to your health, wealth, and your weight loss? Easy. Your health requires you to take in a vast array of clean nutrients, not modified, not genetically manufactured, but clean nutrients created by the environment, created from rich, healthy soils, created from clean water. We need that for our health. So many of our health problems are because we've taken medications or we've taken in toxins, maybe it's drinking or smoking or drugs or whatever your toxin of choice was at the time. We eat foods that are farmed conventionally, not organically, so they are so low in nutrients. They are watered with fluoridated toxic water. Our health relies on our connection to environment. Our wealth also relies on that. There's the saying, you cannot pour from an empty cup. Your wealth cannot grow if you are chasing it from a place of fear, a place of being broken or damaged. That is your empty cup. You need to fill your cup to create wealth, be it emotional, physical, spiritual, financial, whatever your wealth is. You need to nurture that through your environmental connection that may be as small as talking to your neighbour. Our weight reflects our disconnection from the environment. Body fat is toxic. You are not fat, you are toxic. Why? Because the stress that you put yourself under is creating toxins that are stored in your body fat. The chemicals that you take in from your products, from your homes, from cars, from our conventional food, is all those toxins, they're stored in your body fat. Your body fat is your body's way to try and save you, because it doesn't know what to do with the toxins. So it stores them in your body fat. We talk a lot about stress, and in an upcoming episode, in episode 40, we're actually talking about stress relief because it's so, so important. But to get the idea of environmental connection is so important. It's something that so many of us do not understand. Again, I apologize if it sounds like I'm on my soapbox today. But one thing I would like you to do to create your magical life, one thing you can do today, tomorrow, the day after, try every day for a week, is find some sort of connection to your environment. Is it that you start with your home environment and you reduce toxins in your home by using essential oils? Is it that you can start reducing your toxic food by buying organic foods rather than conventional foods? Is it that you can start going outside and planting trees in your yard, or bushes or flowers in your yard, something that will provide for bees, birds, possums, whatever you have in your garden? Is it that you can go and take fruit nets off your fruit trees and put little bags around little clusters of fruit and say to the other animals, you are welcome, I will feed you because I am connected to you, because I thank you for everything that you do? Now, a lot of you might be thinking, Magic's lost her mind, she's a hippie, she's, she might as well be living out in the bush never having showers or whatever. I don't know what you're thinking. But I just want you to understand that we are not the sole providers of life, and that if we are not connected to our environment, there is no way that we can sustain our lives forever. We have finite resources. When do we give back? When do we create healthy environments for ourselves and give back to ourselves? It might be just chemicals that you're using in your home. What is that doing for the environment? What is it doing for you? What is it doing for the people that you love, for your pets? Is it helping anyone else? I'm going to give you all some homework this episode, and that is, for the next week, I want you to try and find your environmental connection. I want you to go outside and appreciate something that nature has given you. And ask yourself, if I never saw this again, how would my life be affected? And really look deeply at that. That ladybug that sits on the 3-year-old's hand and tickles their hand. If that ladybug never existed again, what would happen? That is just a small summary of environmental connection. And I really wanted to just get this out there for you to think about. Because we create such stressful lives for ourselves. We've got to have the latest this or the fanciest that. What does that actually do for us? What does that do to sustain life? What does it do to fulfill your health? What does it do to make you truly, truly happy? I'm not talking happiness for the moment that you bought it, you unboxed it, you started using it, it was the greatest thing since sliced bread. What's it going to do for you in 5 years' time, 10 years' time? How is it going to sustain your life? How is it going to enrich your life? Just a few ideas on environmental connection. Now, coming up in episode 38, we have Trudy Pavlovsky talking about supercharging happiness. And that is an amazing episode, so stay tuned. I do apologize for getting on my soapbox today, but I really wanted you to think about environmental connection and what that means for you creating your magical life. Thanks for listening today. Please subscribe to hear future episodes, leave a review, and share this podcast. You can follow us on Facebook at A Magical Life Podcast or at Holistic Natural Health Australia. That's holistic with a W. You can find us on Instagram at Holistic Natural Health or at www.holisticnaturalhealth.com.au. That's where you'll access all sorts of articles, freebies, and more.